I'm Steve Barnes, and again, this is dealing with subscribers' Wi-Fi and router. So I'm Steve Barnes, the moderator. I'm the wireless operations manager for New Lisbon Broadband and Communications in Eastern Indiana. Our panelists include Ben Royer of Royal Communications in Illinois. There's his information. We've got Darin Steffl, which is the operations manager for Minnesota Wi-Fi, and a little bit of information about him. And Carl Meyerhoefer from, he's the senior director of solutions marketing for Calix, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what Calix has done. So I do things just a little different. Everybody got a pen and paper? Get a little pen and paper. If you have questions in the middle of this, instead of writing away, putting up your hand and asking questions right, send me a text. Because what we find is we get a whole bunch of people asking the same questions, things like that. And so I learned this a couple of years ago, and so I give everybody my cell phone number. That's a cell phone number. Go through and send me a text, and I'll kind of compile them all and find out what the questions everybody has and go from there. So that's how we're going to start. So we will let Carl, he's going to kick us off here. You want your video first?
No.
Okay, all right.
Bring that
So
up when I'm ready. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here today talking about owning the customer experience, and you'll see how this plays out and how it plays into the topic of discussion today, which is managed routers. So which customer experience do you want to deliver? Do you want a customer that looks like this, or one that looks like that? So, when you take a look at brands that have really been successful, they tend to focus on customer experience. So when your customers think of the internet, what are they really thinking about? To them, Wi-Fi equals the internet. So whatever their Wi-Fi experience is really what they believe their internet experience is. And why is that? And I think that's because, Wi-Fi coverage for them is really important now. About 72% of customers surveyed say that they really want high-speed internet in every room of their house. It used to be where it was just in the living room or maybe the kitchen or an office area, but now with all the IoT devices that are out there and all of them connecting to the Wi-Fi within the home, really every corner of the home requires strong Wi-Fi service. So the goal is to really have no dead zones. And some of the applications that are driving this is, some lighting features, security, climate control, audio distribution, and then also just personable wearable devices as well. So historically, for a service provider, what we've seen is that the demarcation point of where the service provider leaves off and where the customer takes over has really been shifting. Historically, in the old telco model, there was a gray box that sat on the outside of the house, and that was the demarcation point. That's where the service provider left off and customer took over. And then as time went on, that demarcation point moved maybe inside of the home. But now the demarcation point is really moving towards that Wi-Fi device. So it's really difficult today for service providers. What we're finding is that saying that your demarcation point is either the outside of the house or just inside of the house definitely causes some additional challenges today that maybe you didn't face in the past. So when it comes to Wi-Fi frustration, if you look at the bar all the way on the bottom, this tells you that over 50% of the people out there are having some sort of Wi-Fi issues in their home. And then this is a chart that lists out all the different areas, but network seems slow, coverage problems, initial setup and configuration. And really the point of this is that all these items that are listed on the left-hand side here can be easily addressed through a managed Wi-Fi solution. So if you're looking to that ultimate customer satisfaction and customer experience, the ability to offer a managed Wi-Fi service can really improve the impression that a customer has of your service, because again, they equate Wi-Fi to the internet. Then on the right-hand side, you see up in the big starburst there, 72%, and we've surveyed a lot of our customers and averaged out about 72% of their complaint calls tend to be Wi-Fi related. So this happens to be an area of challenge and pain for some operators, but also, we believe it's an area of opportunity. So really, regardless of where you think your service stops, you'll end up being held accountable for that Wi-Fi experience, regardless. So what's the solution to this? Embrace it and own the experience yourself. And what you'll find is that it's actually a great area of opportunity. So Calix serves about 1,300 service providers across a variety of different markets: telco, cable TV, WISPs, electric cooperatives, municipalities. And when we look across that customer base, what we're finding is this huge shift and this huge trend towards customers offering a managed Wi-Fi service. So just a few years ago, this number was around 15 to 20%, and now it's in excess of 50. So what I want to talk about now is how we can take and turn this complexity inside of the home into a real opportunity for you, the service provider. Step number one is to own that experience by offering a carrier class Wi-Fi solution, managed service that also has mesh enhancement. Really what this enables you to do is enables you to be able to reduce churn, grow revenue streams, and really it's got an incredible total cost of ownership model. So what you're looking to do is try to really mitigate any issues related to coverage, interference, and performance, and really you can do this for pennies a day. The router that you put in the house is one element of the solution. The other element is the software that you use in order to manage that device. And there's a huge amount of R&D and technology that's being developed on the software front. So make sure that you have a really, really good hardware device, but also the software is critically important to realize operational benefits. So what are some of the things that you're able to do with one of these managed Wi-Fi services? Well, the chart up on the right there shows you an interference pattern. So when a customer calls in, the way this works is customer calls in, it's tied maybe into your CRM software. Instantaneously, the Calix software goes to work, starts analyzing what's going on that customer's router. It can see all the devices that are connected to it, all the interference patterns that are taking place, all the performance-related issues. And now that customer service person has a huge amount of data to be able to interact with that customer. So really, by the time the customer goes through and you introduce yourself, they introduce themselves, they start telling you what the problem is, the software has already gone in and diagnosed maybe what's going on inside of the home and has provided that customer service rep with potential issues. So in this particular case, there's a Wi-Fi error that's been detected. So as that customer is describing what their trouble is, the customer service person has a lot of information to be able to interact with that customer and most likely resolve it right there on the phone very quickly. So putting in a managed Wi-Fi solution is the first step. And at Calix, what we believe is, as I mentioned earlier, we see this challenge as a real opportunity. And we've really tried to take a very different approach, because as we look at what's happening in the market today, and I mentioned all these IoT devices, we're really getting closer and closer to a true smart home experience. And the technology that's being deployed in the consumer electronics space is really enabling a true smart home experience. So once you have your managed router service, there's an opportunity here that lies ahead of you to play a bigger role in the rollout of a smart home. And I'll show you a little bit. So now I'm going from kind of what's available today to a little bit of future looking. And when I say future looking, we're talking about the next couple of quarters, not years and years away. So one of the things that we've been working on is we've been analyzing this market, and as you guys are well aware, I'm sure most of you in the room probably own a Google Home device or maybe an Amazon Alexa device, and the type of functionality that's available, and you also see all the new applications that are coming out for it. Well, quite honestly, when we think about what's going on in the home today, one of these brands is kind of a nice to have, which is that Google Home or the Alexa device. But one brand is really essential in the home. Without your service and without your router being there, there is no Google experience or Alexa experience. You are the critical service. You are the critical brand that's in the home. But today, you're probably perceived as just a broadband provider or just a pipe. So really what we're proposing is that while one brand will end up living in the kitchen and be the brand that customers interact with in a smart home environment, and that's where the brand equity is going to lie, traditionally service providers their brand was relegated to the basement, and they were virtually invisible unless there was a problem. Because then when there's a problem, the first thing they do is they pick up the phone and call their service provider. So how do we leverage this situation? You know, we kind of look at these guys as home invaders. And what they're doing is they're stealing your brand away from you in your own customer's home. So these are big companies. They're investing a lot in technology. But quite honestly, their ultimate goal is not to sell devices. Their ultimate goal is to extract the data that flows through those devices. So how can we leverage that scenario as well? And what we're suggesting is that if there's going to be a router or a device that's placed inside of your customers' homes, let it be yours. Let your brand be the one that your customers interact with. And let's take all the technology and research and development and capability that exists in a Google Home or Alexa, and let's embed it into your router that has your brand on it and that customers are then reacting with and interacting with. So our suggestion or our vision for our service provider customers is that your brand become the brand of the smart home. And we're kind of introducing a whole program that will allow you to be able to market that kind of service, provide that kind of service to your customer. Again, we're talking about maybe, a couple of quarters out, but the vision here is to position your brand in the home as a much more dominant brand, and the brand that lives in the kitchen, not in the basement. And here I want to try to switch over for a second. This is a little video that we put together just to give you a flavor of what an experience like this might look like.
Kids! Alexa, please open Anycom Smart Home.
Hi, this is Anycom Smart Home. How may I help you?
Turn off Lily's Wi-Fi.
Deactivating Lily's Wi-Fi connection. Please confirm and provide password.
Confirm. I love hockey.
Lily's Wi-Fi connection is now disabled. Would you like to set a timer on this?
Yes, for 2 hours.
Confirmed. Is there anything else I can help you with?
No.
Thank you. Goodbye.
2 hours is like a eternity for a 13-year-old. That'll teach her.
So that's kind of what we're envisioning as some of the capabilities that we're working on and looking to embed into that router now that you're placing in the home. So I know the first decision is to go from that demarcation point to offering a managed Wi-Fi service. That's why I kind of say that as step one. But then step two is a vision maybe like this, where you're playing a much bigger part in the home and extracting a lot more value, and especially having a much stronger brand. And then I got a couple of just funny pictures here that I want to share that one of my colleagues put together, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, in conclusion here, you really want to own the customer experience, or your customers will end up defining it for you. And here are some creative individuals in figuring out how they can improve their Wi-Fi service. This one's my favorite. So thank you very much.
All right, so I did have one question that I'll drag in. Someone asked, is Calix going to do the Wi-Fi router branding for the MSPs?
So the program that we're putting in place, even on our current routers today, if you swing by our booth, I could show you, there's a little door on there. And what we do is we have a marketing company that we work with, and if you give us your logo, we can have those little doors branded with your logo on it today. So the intent is to kind of extend that program. But taking it to the next level, we actually work with some outside marketing companies and work on marketing collateral to really show you how to market this kind of service to your end customers, and put together some templates and things like that that either you can use on your own, or you can work with the company that we work with to develop all the marketing materials in order to be able to promote this service.
Okay. All right, next is going to be Ben.
All right, so the way that I kind of approached a lot of my panels after doing these shows for quite a while now is I think that a lot of the benefit comes from the discussion thereafter. So my slides are kind of simplistic, but I wanted to kind of address what this session really is about, which is how do we go beyond the router. So as it stated, I'm operations manager for a WISP in Central Illinois. We have about 5,500 clients and growing. Every one of our clients, for the most part, has a router that we sold them. Unfortunately, we just now thought recently that we should probably be capitalizing on the managed solution, but we wanted to make sure we did it on our terms. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along here. But I want to talk about where that process starts. So whenever you want to start a managed router services, first of all, how many people in here are doing managed routers right now? So about half or so. So the way that we always look at it is it starts really from the moment they call you, the moment they want to sign up for your services. Because it makes a big difference if it's grandma that just sits at a computer, or her iPad that the grandkids bought her and she thinks has to always be plugged in one spot, getting on the book face, as I call it. Or is it the family that has literally 18 devices trying to stream high-def video all the time? Is it the man shed that's 100 yards behind the house that needs service? Do they have a lifeline? We actually have people that have lifelines that have to always have a connection. Do they have VoIP? Everything. Do they have everything? Smart home, everything. So you really want to know this at the onset, right? We want to know what we're getting into. We have clients that have a very small house and only need it in that one seat, or we have clients that just built a mansion and they're going to need about 8 access points, just like you would have for an MDU. So obviously going into it, you want to know these things. Once you get on site, there's a lot of evaluation that goes into it as well. So the installer, we actually train all of our installers on what RF is. Everybody thinks, well, I won't say what FM stands for, but I think most of you know it. It's not magic. There's actually, obviously, physical components to this. So we have a whole RF training session that I put on for our staff. so that they understand that this is something that physically has to connect between devices, right? And so they use that knowledge when they get to the house to look at, where am I putting the router or the access points? Is it a finished basement? Do we have plaster walls versus drywall? What are your common areas? Obviously, as stated before, everybody wants it everywhere. I've had people, say, I gotta have Wi-Fi in the bathroom. Don't ask. But I'm in there a lot. So, pay attention to those things. Ductwork, metal obstacles, all these things come into play when you're planning out a Wi-Fi deployment. But one of the key things that we do is we establish a personal connection, right? So you want to kind of understand what they're expecting from their internet experience. Anybody can go throw a router in and walk away and say, you've got internet now. But are they going to have a smart home? Are they planning on putting one in? Are they going to be adding on to their house and want additional TVs or devices in that area? How about backup services? Maybe they just went and bought a bunch of new equipment for Christmas, and as soon as they plug it in and you walk away from setting up the new internet, now all of a sudden their internet doesn't work, or they think, because they are just hammering their connection because of all these new devices they plugged in. So some of the management isn't just the business side from you, it's also the personal side, talking to them about what their expectations are versus reality. So if I install new internet, but you're going to sit there and hammer it away, it's not the internet, it's what you're doing on it also. So we have to make sure that they understand that. Teenagers is a big thing, right? They're always the ones doing it, in my experience. And I even get the teenager that calls up and says, my Wi-Fi is terrible. And then you call the mom and she's like, what? I didn't know that. So we obviously have to address those concerns, right? What's the teenager doing that's terrible? That's one thing that the owner of the company, my father, he always, anytime you bring a complaint to him about, a customer said the speed wasn't what they want. Well, what are they trying to do that they can't do? That's more important of a question to ask than what's the speed. Just like the doctor that has our service or something that, he has a 25 meg connection and he's doing a speed test and he's getting 23. Well, what's the concern? Is it, that you're not getting the 25 all the way, or maybe you have a device in the background doing something? Are you able to do what you need to do? There's a lot of other questions that have to be asked in that scenario. But understanding their habits, right? Understanding what their overall habits are is very important when it comes to managing their services. So I wanted to just briefly mention a few of the things that we use when we're in the home. So we like to use software to our advantage. Insider is one that we used to use. It used to be free. I think it's purchased now, but Acrylic does have a free version now. So if you look up Acrylic, it's basically just a Wi-Fi analyzer. I'll come back to that other slide. You can't really see much there, but it kind of speaks to what we were talking about earlier with what kind of software you can leverage to manage in-home Wi-Fi. Acrylic does have a paid version also that goes a little bit deeper. But the nice thing is, and we make all of our technicians do this when they're doing an install, is you want to make sure that you're not stepping right on top of the neighbor's Wi-Fi. See what's in the area, pick the clearest channel. Obviously, that's very important. And then I'll go back. So a couple other softwares. Anybody using CN Maestro? A couple people. So I'm not here to sell Camium, but that's one that we use. So I have experience with it, so I can talk on it a little bit. And then obviously UBNT, I haven't used it in a long time, but one of the things, at first I screenshotted this 5 gig, but then I thought, you know what, I'm going to leave it because a lot of people think wireless in the home is 2.4. Well, anymore it's not, right? So we're starting to leverage 5 gig channels in the home. Keep in mind too that a lot of you are delivering service to the home on 5 gig. So pay attention to that as well. Make sure that your router isn't interfering with your own service delivered to the home. So it does help to do analysis of both 5 gig and 2.4, as well as the man cave situation. So we do a lot of point-to-points internally. So we will shoot a point-to-point from the house out to the man cave. We have to make sure that all of that doesn't interfere with ourselves. So self-interference is kind of also a talking point. On Maestro, so Maestro and the CM Pilot offering has quite a bit of good data. We actually just started using CM Pilots for our managed service, and we have a 99% take rate ever since we started offering it. So it's pretty easy to sell when you explain to the customer that if you ever have a problem, all you have to do is call us, and at no cost to you additionally, we will not only fix the problem in the home, but if you need additional services or whatever else, it's already provided in that managed router option. So we market it really easily. It's a very high take rate, and as long as you have tools like this or the Calix offering or any other offerings that are out there, obviously it gives you a lot more opportunity to support your in-home Wi-Fi. Here's just another screen grab from Maestro and the CN Pilot data that we collected. So you can get everything from bandwidth usage, so the customer says, well, my internet's always acting up around this time. Well, it's the time that their kid gets home, and so you can see that the device using the most bandwidth is kid's iPad or whatever, because he gets home and he watches high-def videos of other kids opening toys, So obviously, the more information you can get, the better in troubleshooting the client. But one of the things that I talk a lot to my staff about, not just with in-home Wi-Fi, but also when you're hooking up wireless to the home, is thinking outside the box, right? This is if you ask any customer, this is their wireless coverage. It's terrible where I want it. It's kind of okay in certain areas, but if I go outside or my neighbor's house, it's perfect. Obviously, that's never accurate, but that's what they think. And so sometimes we have to think outside the box. So I gave a few examples that we've run into. So Apple doesn't play nice. Sometimes you get a device that for whatever reason, Apple devices don't want to play nice with it. Sometimes we mix it up. We try a different brand of router or a different brand of access point, just to, not necessarily that that's the permanent solution, but you have to kind of start going down this path for troubleshooting techniques. Every summer my Wi-Fi is bad. Maybe you have a snowbird. Who has snowbirds? So I'm from Illinois. Does everybody know what a snowbird is? They come south for the winter. So we have those. Snowbird shuts their wireless off or turns their power off when they go south, and then they come home for the summer, and they turn it on, and it just so happens it's on the same channel as yours, and you can't figure out why your internet always starts acting up, and you start losing connection to your router whenever the snowbird's on. Why can't all 40 of my devices stream? That's a real question, believe it or not. Internal QoS, that's something that we very rarely do, but sometimes we do. And what that means is basically you may have the kid that's on the iPad and he's eating up the bandwidth. Does the parent really want to have to pay for more bandwidth, or would they be totally okay with you capping their kid to 2 meg? Most cases it's, cap my kid. I need the internet for work. So sometimes you can get away with that. You just have to be careful sometimes with that, because if they forget that that's a thing, then they're mad at you because their kid's yelling at them because they're only getting 2 meg, right? So you have to make sure that that's very clearly stated and communicated with the customer, what you're doing and how you're doing it. So dryer and elevator don't talk. I meant to make a note on this so I wouldn't forget what that meant, but I actually remembered, so I'm glad. So we have a lot of grain elevators around where we're at. That's what that refers to. We actually have clients that, they get internet installed at their farm, and they're like, well, my grain dryer or my grain elevator won't talk to the router. Oh, well, you didn't tell me about that, for one. And for two, where is it? It's out in the middle of a metal grain bin, right? So sometimes you have to think outside the box as far as, and that goes back to the getting an understanding of what the client's needs are, right? Understanding up front that I'm not just getting this internet for me or my kids, that I also want it for some production on the farm. I have farmers that literally use our Wi-Fi to watch cows be born from work. So, and then Blue Cross Blue Shield, to VPN or not to VPN. Sometimes it is out of your hands, and we had a very long battle with Blue Cross Blue Shield. I don't have a problem with them. I had a problem with their IT staff locally in Illinois for a while. because their VPN work at home employees were having a lot of troubles, and they were blaming it on our service, until I was able to prove that it wasn't just our service, it was everybody's service that had a Blue Cross employee trying to connect back to their system. And then they eventually found out that there was a problem with their equipment. So sometimes you do have to go even beyond your own stuff and kind of troubleshoot beyond it. Other than that, that's all I had. I just wanted to kind of start the conversation on some of the things we do to troubleshoot Wi-Fi in the home, and any questions are welcomed. Thanks.
Darin?
I am Darin with Minnesota Wi-Fi. I am actually the owner of Minnesota Wi-Fi, and we have been doing managed routers for about a year and a half now. There we go. I don't have any flashy slides or anything like that. Mine's more just information based on what we've seen and experienced with our managed router deployment. Just a quick recap, we did start with CN pilot. We had at one point 250 of those in the field. For the most part, they worked really well. We'd only deployed the single band ones, the 2.4, and not the dual band. You know, they worked fairly well, but they just weren't as polished at the time when we used them. So we tried Calix routers, the gigacenters, and just absolutely had amazing results. You know, we tried CN Pilot, IgniteNet demos, and then Calix. And from that point on, we have 455 Calix routers in the field today. And we're going to continue to deploy those as fast as we can to the rest of our customer base. So we know that already. 72% on Calix's survey, we're right around that number. 70 to 80% of our tech support calls are definitely caused by in-home Wi-Fi issues. Traditionally, in the past, that was a customer-owned router that they were having trouble with. And at that point, we are trying to upsell them to our managed router platform or plans that include it now. And once we've done that, those calls just disappear. They become your best customers ever. They never bother you. They get their speed all the time. They refer new customers, and all that happens as soon as we fix their Wi-Fi issue in the home. Because if you have bad Wi-Fi, you have bad internet in their perception, and that's what we all know. So obviously, when we started 6 years ago, and probably everybody here, is bring your own router. We did not really sell them. We, told the customer that, yeah, we like these 2 or 3 brands, maybe avoid Linksys and Belkin, and that worked for a while. And then as people stream more and add more devices in the home, we see that their own router, that's outdated by 7 years, like no firmware updates, it just becomes a problem. And the more they use it, the more they notice that there's issues. If it's not slowdowns and bottlenecks, it's reboot issues. The router freezes up. I have to power cycle it every day or every other day or 5 times a day. And that could be really annoying. If I was at home and had to reboot my router that often, I would go insane. So my Calix router at home was on a UPS, and before I updated the latest firmware, it had a 180-day uptime, no reboots. I've never owned a router in the past that's lasted that long without needing a power cycle to keep it moving. So you definitely want to be providing routers to people that are stable, that work all the time, and that they don't need to babysit too much. And then to go back to that too, if you are telling the customer to purchase their own router and you're not offering managed Wi-Fi, what we did, we helped them with their own router. And as soon as you help them, you're now their support contact when they have router issues, and you're doing that for free. So if you are doing that and you offer managed router service, you need to flat out tell them, I cannot help you with your router. We offer a managed router platform though, that you can take and we'll install a router for you, we'll support it, we'll warranty it as long as you're a customer. And so it became hard to say no to the customers, like, no, I can't help you with your router, but it's really been beneficial the last year and a half transferring or basically transitioning to that where you can say no, we support our router and our router by itself. It goes back to that you should not be able to or not support someone else's equipment for free. There are quite a few WISPA vendors here at the show that offer managed routers and service, like cloud services, so you have a single pane of glass to do your mass firmware upgrades, do site scans and everything, and do the site survey. They'll check for interference. CN Pilot does it with CN Maestro. Calix is the same way. We've got all the routers in there tied to our customer accounts. You log in, you can see all the devices connected, their signal levels. you can go ahead and scan for interference and see that neighbor's router is on channel 1, the Calix is on channel 1, and it recommends and says, channel 6 or channel 11 will be your best channel based on the aggregate interference it sees. And then you can hard code your 2.4 gigahertz channel there and usually fix the problem pretty quickly. When we started offering managed router a year and a half ago, it was an optional service. We did $50 setup up front and then $10 a month. We were really good at selling that, so we had about a 65% take rate when it was an optional service. I was expecting more like a 30% take rate, and it was 65%, and I was honestly blown away. So we did a good job selling it. Most people are, if it's an optional service, they're selling it for between $5 and $12 a month is what I've seen when I'm talking to other wireless ISPs. What we decided to do after we had such great success with managed routers and Calix, we changed all our new customer plans. We upped the rates $10 a month for all new customers, and then we've been offering a promotion since then where the router is now free every month. So it's something during our sales call that we say we used to charge $10 a month. Now the router is free. You're getting a $10 monthly credit as well as a $10 charge, but the bundle price for the internet now is just $10 higher than it used to be. So we're still making our money. It's now free and included, so now we have a 99% take rate on new customers. So it's almost like requiring it. A few techies say no because they already have a crazy cool setup at their house, and I'm okay with that. But for the 99% of the other people that have no clue what Wi-Fi is or how to fix it, they're all now saying, yes, I want that router. I want you to manage it and warranty it for life and help us with it. So I would recommend if it's an optional service, just bump your rates up $10 a month and make it free now on a promotion, and you'll get those routers in every house for every new customer you have. And for us, it's definitely diagnosing low signal issues, like you see an iPad, you've got a neg 88 signal to it. You ask, well, where are you using the iPad? Oh, in my metal barn, 150 feet away, I don't get Wi-Fi out there. And it's like, well, that's why. You need to get another a mesh unit out there, or do wireless repeaters or a bridge to the barn and then add a mesh unit out there, and then you'll have great Wi-Fi. And they don't know that. They just assume it's magic, like most customers do, and they just want it to work everywhere, and it's just not possible. So this really helps us educate and give solid information to the customer where we're not guessing as to what the problem is. We actually can give them information we know because we have visibility into the router now at that point. So we're about halfway through our managed router deployments for existing customers. So all the new customers are already getting the managed routers, but we're going back and moving all existing customers onto our new rate plans with the higher price. So they're getting a speed upgrade and now the option to take the managed router at no additional cost on top of the upgrade they're getting. So at some point here by the end of 2018, we're hoping to be at 100% of new subs and existing customers are on our new rate plans. And hopefully all of those same people take the new router since it'll be included at no cost. The ones we have switched over, like I said, our support calls basically drop off to zero for those customers that have a managed router in the house. That is all I have for my presentation. If you guys have questions, text Steve, or maybe we can raise hands, whatever works.
Okay, we'll get there. I'm going to add just a little bit since we have plenty of time. One thing that I've had, and these guys have shown some different other options with different things. I have seen locations in homes, and in our area we have some really large homes that it's really hard to know where all they need signal. And something that I've been doing WISPA since 2007, and so one thing that I've not seen on our show floor is a really good testing situation for that. And I have one that I have discovered. I'm testing it now currently in our business. It's a thing called the Greenlee Air Scout. And I just want to show you guys this, and then we'll go into questions. The Greenlee Air Scout is an interesting device. It looks like this. You get this nice hardened case that has a DC charger that you can plug into a cigarette lighter and carry around with you wherever. And what you get is you get these 6 pucks. Basically, they're about that big. And the center console unit, you have to either use an iPad or an Android tablet. It will not work with a PC. It will not work with a Mac regular PC. It has to be an Android or a iPad. But with that, you have the software that you download from the stores, and it controls it. You hook the center unit to your router, and you can run it in 2 different ways. You can either just tell the Air Scout to do all of it for you, or you can tell the Air Scout to connect to the router, and in the software you put in what the SSIDs are in the house, and then you put these things all over the place. And this just shows a little picture of what the software looks like. This is off their website, but what you end up with is this, and you can set up multiple floors. They have multiple designs for how the layout of the house could be. There's not really a free hand to it, but you just drag the pucks around to the different places in the house, and then you start it and walk away. Just let it sit there and do its thing. What's a lot of the guys who, the sales people that have talked to me, say what they recommend, what Greenlee recommends is you go in, after you know for sure you're going to get a customer service, you go into the house, you find out where they think they want their router, and you hook that up, you put these pucks all over the place, and I do recommend you put one in the bathroom. There's been tests done that shows that the bathroom is the number 2 place in the house that the internet is used. Okay? I mean, you can spend some time there each day, so especially women, but at least my wife does. So that's something that they recommend. But put these all over the place in the far corners of your house, and what you get out is a heat map like what you see here. And it has a whole bunch. Once it's done, I tested this at my own house last week about 4 different times. I tried every conceivable way of testing it, and I have one of my daughter's rooms that does not. I mean, they were in the red, and she has always griped about the signal quality in her room, and I thought it was fine. For my phone it worked fine, but even this system showed that it was red in that area. So this is a interesting thing. Most of you are going to say, because we're WISPs, I understand that. Most of you are going to say, oh, that's a lot of money. It is $4,000 for a setup, okay? But some of the companies have one guy that's their primary thing, and if you're going to start doing, a mesh system in places that you don't know really, whether I need 1 access point, 4 access points, or whatever, you can go in and set this up in 10 minutes. You can know exactly where you want, and it can tell you where it recommends. It's one of the options is where would be the best place for an access point in this home. It gives you all that kind of information. So, yes, sir.
Is it enterprise grade?
It would be designed for anything. You could use it for any. All you do is get a square of where it is, so you can put it in any type of building, anywhere, and utilize it. So if you had a building with steel walls and stuff like that, it's just going to show you a heat map of where signals are wherever you put those pucks. So again, this is not for everybody, but I know that for a long time I have been looking for something when the customer says, that stuff sucks in this back corner of the house. And I'm like, I take my Wi-Fi analyzer and walk around and say, it looks pretty good with mine, but that's not their little old junk iPad. And maybe mine can go down to a neg 75 and not having problems, but on their little iPad, it may be seeing it at a neg 85, and that's the issue. So this was just a thing that I just wanted you guys to know. Again, if you're interested in it, it's just getairscout.com, and I think they have a 2-puck one, a 6-puck. And again, it comes in this really hardened case, and you can plug it right into your car and charge it from place to place. So I just wanted to give you that as something, as another option. Is it 2 gigahertz only? No, actually, it right up here in the corner, you say you can switch it between 2 and 5. So it'll do both 2 and 5, and actually it'll do 20 megahertz channels, 40 and 80s as well. So it has all those capabilities, so you can do enterprise level stuff. All right, so guys, how do you deal with those power techies that want to control their own ports and all that stuff on your managed system?
We give them access. On the Calix router, there's an admin and password printed on the back, and we don't change that. We don't tell them it's there unless they ask. We also forewarn them if they change something and break it, we may charge them to fix it. So you kind of scare them a little bit. It's like the router is set up optimally to do everything you want it to do. UPnP is turned on. You shouldn't need to forward ports really for anything except cameras, which we'll do if they send us the ports. It takes us 2 minutes. So I don't want them messing around with it. I want to do it ourselves so we can document what's been done and not cause confusion. If they do mess it up, they can just factory reset the router, and we can quickly just set their SSID and password up again and get it fixed. So that's the beauty of managed routers. Even if they do hold the reset button, which they know they're not supposed to do, we can fix it in a minute or two for them versus their home router. If they factory reset it, they're on the hook to set it up again, and they have no clue.
Yeah, basically same thing in my experience. And usually, if it's a techie guy, sometimes it's just okay to let them do it. Like, they're going to know, for the most part, you're going to get an idea of what they're wanting to do, on if it's okay to kind of let them meddle in there. But yeah, we're in the same boat, so we can very easily push back config if we need to. A lot of those guys will have their own router too, so we run into that. And in some cases, we'll get into more complex, some MikroTik routers in the home, where we'll work kind of closely with the client on what it is exactly they're looking to do and accomplish, and we still maintain most of the control of that. But it really just depends on each end user and what their use case is.
Do you guys let them self-install their routers, or do you guys make a truck roll for every new router setup?
For us, we truck roll pretty much every one. Again, because you're owning it. So one thing that all of my employees are taught from day one is the second that you touch it, you own it. Both us as a company, but you as an individual. So we don't live by the last technician messed it up mentality. We live by the you touched it, you own it. Our company now owns it. So if it's a router that we're going to manage or even have any hand in, we want to make sure that we're the ones configuring it and setting it up for them.
So this question, it sounds like really is only relevant for existing customers switching to a managed router. If it's a new install, we install the router on site. But for existing customers, we have pictures of every install already, so we know where it was installed previously. If it's a good spot, we just configure the router in the office and just say, it's here in the office if you want to pick it up sometime during business hours. If they want it installed on site, we charge a truck roll fee for that. So everybody has picked up a router when they're upgrading and taking the managed router platform with us after they've already been a customer.
Do you find that having a router, one of your routers, makes customers more sticky?
Absolutely. If they don't have Wi-Fi issues, which means they don't have internet issues either, they absolutely love your service. It's when they have the cheap $20 Belkin from Walmart that needs reboots weekly and has poor performance and poor Wi-Fi range. That's when they hate your internet because their Wi-Fi is bad. That will cause you to lose a customer, and there's really no going back as soon as you lose them. So getting a managed router in that's reliable and that works makes them extremely sticky to the service.
Yeah, basically, and I'm sure some of you, I know we have for sure, have had clients that you'll see them on social media bashing your competitor because their internet's terrible and they have it, and then they come to you and then they do the same thing, but it's because the entire time they had the same in-home router that they configured all wrong.
or their neighbors stepping on them or whatever else. So the second that you get your hands on it and you can kind of resolve some of those issues, not just by managing the router remotely, but again, a lot of it comes down to, if you do a truck roll and you got a guy out there and you spend the time to really analyze the house and where they're using it and what the signal strengths are and things like that, you can really help your client out, and then that sticky factor just comes secondhand to that.
Carl, can as a service provider, can we manage a secondary router behind that, or how's that handled?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the Calix devices, we have our main GigaCenter device, and then we offer a managed mesh device. So that mesh device will link up to that main GigaCenter and can be managed exactly the same way, see all the same information, and it's really a very, very simple setup. So basically it's press the WPS button on the mesh, press it on the GigaCenter, and all the information automatically transfers over, SSIDs, the entire setup, and then that becomes another managed device. And for the mesh units, since those sometimes are not deployed at the time when the truck was rolled, we've designed ours in a way that the customer can do a very simple setup. Like I said, press the 2 buttons, and then we even have LED lights on it that the customer can walk away from the GigaCenter, and it will tell you the optimum distance that you can be away from that main unit and still provide good Wi-Fi to the location they're trying to get it to, but also a good link connection back to the main router.
Ben, how's that work with the Cambium stuff?
Same setup. So CN Maestro has layers to it that you can manage the router and devices behind it just the same. It's also a very evolving platform. Obviously, it's fairly new, so they're adding feature sets as we go, but usually it's pretty easily managed.
So is there any security issues with you having access into the customer's routers?
From the customer standpoint, it's a good question. So far, we haven't had any complaints, but usually it's pretty secure. If somebody signed up for managed services, we kind of go over very detailed what it is that we're going to do for them. We go down to every level that we're going to touch. So we actually sell it as we're going to see, what devices are connecting, and some people even want us to look at their traffic. That's where those microtics come into play, and we start, torching interfaces and looking at what actual traffic is going across it. And sometimes we'll even put one in just temporarily to see why this person is having so much trouble thinking that they're not getting the bandwidth that they should be. And you come to find out there's something running in the background or whatever else that we need to track down and shut down. So, as long as you're using secure equipment, I think that you're pretty safe. As far as the privacy concerns for the customer, obviously everybody has to comply with all of those things, but as long as you're open with the customer about it, usually they're pretty understanding.
I think the big thing with security too is we know customers when they buy their own router that most of them don't do the firmware updates that come out. We've seen Netgear have major vulnerabilities on routers that are getting hacked, or the WPA, the crack encryption deal. Customers don't update their routers, so they're completely vulnerable. And as long as we offer a managed service, we all know that we upgrade them in mass. So new upgrade comes out with Calix, we test it 2 weeks. With the click of a button, we schedule it for 4:30 a.m. and all the routers are upgraded when I wake up in the morning. It's really that simple, and the customers shouldn't have to worry about it, but they should also be up to date at the same time.
Yes, sir.
Speaking on the updates process, do you see a lot of downtime or issues with the upgrades, or any difficulties pushing those out to individual devices, or?
For the most part, when we push an upgrade, sometimes we lose a little cloud management access once in a while. But for the most part, we see like a 90% success rate on upgrades, and then the rest, sometimes the customer needs to reboot the router. Just a little firmware thing, but the traffic to the customer is still running properly. We just lose the cloud until they reboot it sometimes. Not really a big deal, but for the most part, a very high success rate.
He knows my answer to that word.
Figured.
You can post it to everybody so they know.
Ben, there was a question about in the CM Maestro, do you use one global profile or customize it for each different customer, or create their own?
Yeah, so right now we've been using a global. but we're actually in the process of kind of modifying that a little bit because we have 4,000 devices in CN Maestro right now. So we started out maybe a little bit too global, and so now we're starting to get a little bit more granular. I would recommend, if you're planning on large-scale deployments, starting as granular as possible. It's just easier to get to things. I know at first it's kind of confusing, but with some of the search elements and everything else, it makes it easier now.
Darin gave his price. Why don't you give what your price is for your managed service?
So our managed service, we do $5 for the router, and we do another $2 for insurance, so it's $7 total. I don't know if anybody's doing insurance out there. It's a win-win. $2 a month, added insurance. We replace any equipment that ever breaks or fails, no questions asked. And it's as equal a take rate as our managed router services, as cheap as it is. So we've had like 99% take rate.
We use ReadyNet routers for our managed routers, and an ACS that one of our companies provide for us. And we're at a $5 rate per month, and we also offer a $5 insurance on everything with our stuff. So, we have a lot of customers that, for our $40 plan is all $50 because they take the router and the insurance and the whole kit caboodle because they just don't want to touch anything about it. So.
Yeah, I think the sweet spot, when we started, we did $50 setup and $10 a month, and I thought that was going to be too high. But I'm like, we can change it in 2 weeks, if it doesn't work. And the take rate was so high, I'm like, wow, we should almost raise the price again. But I see people starting at $5 a month or $7, and don't be afraid to start high because you can always lower it later. It's harder to start at $5 and raise it though. So, try $10, $12. I know Zirkle Wireless, I think they're $99 setup and $12 a month or $15, one of the two. And they have like a 60 to 70% take rate as an optional service. So don't be afraid to start that number pretty high.
Yes, sir.
Following up on the sticky question, I asked that question. It wasn't just about the service being better. I had in-laws, and they switched to Verizon. And for example, Verizon, you can't change the SSID, you can't change the security. They've got hundreds of devices in their home. They quickly learned how much of a pain it is to switch ISPs when your ISP was managing your router, right? So the sticky becomes, I'm not going to jump for a $20 extra savings because I'm going to have to spend 6 months reconfiguring. In fact, she didn't even know how to reconfigure half the devices. I ended up going over and fixing things up for her. So when you've locked the customer in, have you found that customers go, hey, I don't want to, the hassle of switching becomes so much higher because, I've got this managed service in there.
I've never seen a customer complain to have to reconnect their iPhone or Roku's one more time.
Yeah.
Most people don't have 40 devices. They have, 5 to 15. So it's so quick and easy. They don't really bother. But we do all that remotely. So if they want it to match their old router, that's not a problem. They just need to let us know.
So you let them do the match and stuff because a lot of the bigger players aren't doing that. Like Verizon goes in and they go, no, this is your SSID. This is your.
I mean, yeah.
key,
if the customer is very picky about it, we'll change SSID entirely. But right now we just do MN WiFi.com- their last name, and then they get to choose their password.
Gotcha.
But what the big boys do, Charter, CenturyLink, their name is in the SSID, and we didn't do that until 4 months ago. And I'm like, what the heck? What the big guys do this? Why don't we? It's free advertising.
Right.
The router's free, so the customer doesn't care that our name is in the SSID, and that's worked really well in towns where we have service. We've had people literally call and said, I pulled up Wi-Fi on my phone and I saw MNWiFi.com, and I didn't know you guys existed. So we're getting free advertising by having our name in the SSID, and you should all probably be doing the same.
That's a good idea.
So I'm actually kind of glad you brought that up. So we do kind of do things a little bit differently from that component. We will let them use whatever they want if they want. I mean, we have a standardized process that we use, but if they want their own SSID. But how many people in here configure computers for customers, work on them? So a few. So I got my start working on computers before we even had internet company, and so we kind of kept that component. And so that's part of kind of going beyond the router for us. Is we actually will, if your computer is running poorly, then that can affect your internet experience, right? So We actually go that little extra bit. We work on their computer. We actually will walk them through changing their stream settings on Netflix. We do a lot of little extra things like that that kind of speaks to that if they go to our competitor, the big cable company or the telco in town, they're not going to do any of that stuff. And so we actually kind of saw an opportunity there to where if a customer left us because, oh, I'm going to go get the bundle deal or whatever, we actually started doubling our prices for any of those services because we would have people come back to our office and say, yeah, I know I left you for the cable company, but you always worked on my computer and you kept it running smooth and now it's not running smooth again, so work on it again. Oh, well, I'm sorry, you're not a customer of ours anymore. And the customer gets a discount. You get to pay regular price, which is twice the price. So there is actually opportunities there to make additional funds or make the sticky factor greater because of the additional services you offer.
Any other questions? It is beer 30. One more.
One more.
It's not a question, so you guys don't have to freak out. I just want to speak real quick on Maestro's granularity because we had that question. Since it is an evolving platform, their developers listen to our inputs. As it stands right now, Maestro, in order to set separate SSIDs, you have to actually create them and deploy them into individual profiles. That's actually evolving, so if you guys are starting with Maestro and kind of frustrated with that, they actually have it in the roadmap where we can override those on individual cases, so it will remember that setting per device, and then if that device is reset, the next time the configuration gets pushed to it, it'll remember that SSID and passphrase automatically and push it right back into the router.
That was one reason why I didn't stay going with that, because it was very complicated. Even for me, a tech person, there's no way my office staff would figure out how to change it
Yeah, and
one off. So we had to go much simpler than that.
right, and that's, once again, one of the drawbacks is starting with something so new, but in the flip side of that, they are very receptive to what we're asking, and they do listen to their customers. So that is in the roadmap and coming hopefully soon to their platform.
All right, thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for spending the day with us.